All right, dude. Hey, well, first of all, congratulations on your release of your documentary, dude. Man, Jordan and I went to it that evening and really didn't have any expectations of what we were going to be watching there. Obviously, we know Justin, but you did such an amazing job on this documentary called Chasing 400. So, first of all, congrats, brother.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It wasn't intended to, be seen in a theater like that initially, but after we put it together, we're like, I think it'd be great to get to the community of Casper together and get everybody to see this in person. And it turned out pretty good.
Oh man, it was awesome. Now you've also had some tremendous success on YouTube with it already. I was talking to Justin yesterday about this. I mean, you've just in the release that you've had it with, which hasn't been that long, you've already had over 60,000 views, dude. I mean, you got to be pretty stoked about that.
Oh yeah. I think today it actually hit 75,000, which is like, again, like not what we expected at all. I mean, like on my small YouTube channel, I'll upload a video. It gets like a couple hundred views here and there. And then this video just absolutely took off. I think that probably part of it is due to that ultra running is still such a new sport. Hasn't been around that long, and it just really hasn't had a lot of media exposure. There's just not a lot of documentaries and films and stories being told about it. There's a handful of them that are out there, but not many. And so to put something like this out there, that's an hour-long feature on ultra running, I think people are looking for that kind of stuff, and that was exactly what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a real big need for people getting exposed to all of these extreme sports. I can't tell you how many documentaries my wife and I have sat up and watched about people that are skiing the Alps, or they're climbing, seven peaks in 4 months. So this felt very well like in line with all of that. So I think you really did that. The timing of it was just perfect. So, and I know you've got it submitted to some film festivals as well too, correct?
We haven't submitted any film festivals yet. We're in the process of that, but there's actually a French film distribution company that hit us up and asked if they could distribute it throughout their market. So that's going, which is cool. I don't know the numbers on that yet, but people are definitely seeing it, which is pretty cool.
Okay, so you've got 75,000 views on it. People are always wondering because YouTube pays you for the more views you get on this. Are you starting to see any residual income coming in from the amount of views yet?
So my channel is monetized, but that video specifically is not monetized. Okay. For just mostly due to like different music that's used in it. It's like YouTube strikes it for copyright, and there's sometimes you can't fight YouTube on some of that stuff. So unfortunately, that video we're not making any money off of, and that's kind of like the whole thing with this whole film is like we definitely didn't do it to make money or profit off it, and in fact, I think both of us probably had a net loss on it, which is like, in my opinion, makes it even better because it's just purely passion. I love filmmaking, storytelling, and running, and Justin obviously loves running. And so to see it do this well, based just solely on passion, is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, once again, it's a great film. I highly recommend anybody that's out there looking for just some great content to go watch it. I'd love to know. Let's talk to the audience about this. You called up Justin and said, "Hey, listen, I want to film a documentary. I want to, do you have any ultras that you're running?" He had some coming across with the, "Hey, well, I'm going to chase these 4." Like, was there a moment where you're like, that's a big undertaking? Like, we went from like one weekend to now this film is going to be over, I think, was it 18 weeks, wasn't it, is what he did for all 4 of those races?
I think it was 13 weeks actually, which is, all the more impressive.
Yeah.
But it was basically just what you just described. It was initially I was like, okay, I'll dedicate a weekend, follow him somewhere in the US, go film him, run a 100-mile race. But then obviously that times 4 becomes a heck of a lot more time and more footage to edit, and everything else just becomes a lot more with that. But after the first race, I was like, I can't just stop here. It's like, there's so much more to the story. And I just would have felt I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I just went and filmed, that first race and then ignored the other 3. So at that point I was like, just the inner creative and storyteller in me was like, we got to go finish this out.
Well, you had like 25 hours of footage that you had to kind of go through and then really create a story through that.
Yeah, that was it was definitely a challenge for sure. I mean, by far the largest creative thing I've ever done in my life. I've done like wedding films and some smaller projects like that involve storytelling, but nothing of this magnitude where I have, over 20 hours of footage. And the majority of the footage was actually interview footage with Justin. I think I had like 8 or 9 hours of basically just him sitting down answering questions. And so taking all of these pieces and trying to fit that into a cohesive story that makes sense and, has ups and downs and a little bit of drama and, all the elements of a good story. And, to do that just as a one person team was like, I learned so much through that process. I'm a big fan of, putting yourself in challenging situations and uncomfortable situations, because that's truly where you grow the most. And this just epitomized that, I think.
Yeah. And I think that I'd love to dive a little bit into this is like, you went into this with some understanding. Obviously you've created films in the past. You have a pretty clear vision of, what you probably want this film to look like to a certain point, but what were some of the surprises? What were some of the things where like, man, I didn't really see that as a big challenge, but it was a huge obstacle, or, things that you took away from this where you're like, okay, I'm so glad I experienced this because I've just grown that much more in this industry.
I think honestly, just the kind of the logistics of shooting an event like that, because it's, all these events these 100-mile races are between 20 to like 27 hours. So it's, even just the fact of being up for that long to stay awake and be capturing these moments. And it was just me individually filming at all these events. So kind of planning logistically how to shoot all these was a big challenge as well. And then obviously once I gathered all the footage, bringing it back into the editing studio and trying to piece that together, all these different puzzle pieces, which I always compare it to, you have it's like a jigsaw puzzle with 10,000 pieces, but you have no clue what the final picture is supposed to look like. You're the one making the final picture. And so I don't know if there was really one thing in particular that stood out, but just all these different things of how to handle this amount of footage. And really it's just the story is always king. So it's like, sometimes I would sacrifice the composition of a shot or the lighting of a shot or, a certain angle just in order to capture that moment, and kind of put the aesthetics of it on the back burner, because most of the time that's more important, to the average viewer. They're not going to care if a shot's too dark or too bright, or, the angle is not quite perfect. Right. They're going to care more about how the story makes them feel. Yeah. And so that was always at the forefront of my mind, is just tell a good story and capture everything I could. And ultras, there's just so much happening. And typically that's all happening at the aid stations. So that's probably, a good chunk of the footage as well, is just Justin coming to the aid stations, talking to his parents, interacting with his crew, kind of all the drama that ensues there. It's a lot of stuff. And this is my first exposure to ultra running as well. So I'd never even been to a 100-mile race before showing up for that first one to film it. Yeah. And so that alone was kind of a shock of like, so this is what it's like to come to a 100-mile race. But it was, I don't know, I wouldn't change anything. It was such a great experience, and I just learned so much from it.
Do you feel like, I had the opportunity, I wrote a book and, completely green, had no idea of really the process of writing a book. And I didn't know, what went into it. I didn't know like all of the other things. And what I found out was that just writing the book was like base camp 1. If you're going to go to Everest, you're like, oh no, I'm going to the peak. I got it published and I'm ready. And you're like, no, like you were literally, when you publish the book, it's at base camp 1. Have you found like there's so much more work now that you've actually completed the film? You've got to get it exposed. You've got opportunities. You're talking, I'm sure, on podcasts, you're having interviews, you're wanting to get, you're wanting to get even more exposure. Like, do you feel like, holy cow, like now we're really working, to be honest with you?
Oh, definitely. It's like, I don't know, in the creative world, especially, you have to put in all this work up front. A lot of times it's just doing stuff for free for people to build up a portfolio. And it's kind of how I approach this as well. It's like, I didn't think of this film as being like, the peak of something. It's really, like you mentioned, it's just like, you're just at the bottom of the mountain, like you're slowly creeping up. And you just use this as a stepping stone to, make new connections with people and, do things like this, like being on podcasts, and then to use whatever I learned in the process of making that film to go out and make better films. And even now, like going back and watching the film and seeing all this footage, there's so many things I would do differently if I could do it again. Which I think that's, kind of the whole point of it, is to you don't know what you don't know. And so
Yes.
you have to just go out and do it.
Yeah.
And that's really what happened with this was I had no clue how to film all these races, how to put any of this together. So going out, doing it, throw myself in the deep end. And now I just have all that experience, and it's only going to make me better for when that next big challenge comes.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, it is very evident that you threw yourself into this project. I mean, some of those shots that you had deep in the woods, I mean, we're all trying to figure out like, man, how did he get the camera back there? Like, and how many miles back was that? Because I'm always thinking of like, well, how did he get out of there? So I got to imagine you've got some good stories about that too.
I mean, it's I think on average between the 4 races, I probably logged like 25 miles myself.
Uh-huh.
And I think at Western States, I ended up logging like 34 miles or something crazy like that. I mean, it's not 100 miles, but it was still a
That's
good
over
amount.
a marathon, man. That's over a marathon. So like, come on now, that's nothing light right there.
Yeah. So the logistics of it, filming wise, was I would roll with Justin's parents to the aid station. They would set up their stuff. I would hike up the trail towards Justin, 2 or 3 miles to wherever I could find a good spot that seemed like it'd be good aesthetically. I'd get him running through, then I would essentially just run back up the trail with him, another, those 2 or 3 miles, film at the aid station, and then do the same thing going back down the trail another 2 or 3 miles. So it was, I got to see a lot of the courses too, which was pretty cool. I was there maybe enjoying it a little bit more because I didn't have nearly as many miles on my feet at the time. But just being on those courses and seeing all these other ultra runners pass by and see these people when they're 70, 80 miles deep into a race, and just the variances and how people handle that kind of physical pain.
Yeah.
And because it's different when people are coming through the aid stations and everybody's cheering them on and stuff versus like when they're out on the course 2 or 3 miles away from all that and they're just out there by themselves. Like you really get to see the rawness of that experience. So I feel like I definitely got a more unique vantage point than a lot of people do, which is pretty cool.
I think that you need to come out with like a follow-up video about all the pain and agony that really goes on behind the scenes that all these other runners, because I think that's one thing that Jordan and I talk about is like, man, here's Justin that we know is he's an elite athlete in this ultra running. And you could see the wear and tear and physical abuse that he was going through mentally and physically because of the race. And I'm just thinking like, and he's not normal because he's elite. Like, what about all these normal people that are doing this? Like, they have just got to be completely wrecked. So if you got any footage of that, that would be a really good sequel to your follow-up video, man.
Yeah, that was honestly one of the biggest challenges of putting this together was, like you said, Justin, he's not a normal guy. He's definitely elite. And he says it at one point in the film. He's like, I don't think I have an elite speed or anything, but I have an elite grit. And that's a perfect way to explain it, is like, he's just going to keep going no matter what. And so he handles that stuff so well that he doesn't really show that he's in pain, or he doesn't say like, oh man, this hurts, this sucks, like most people would. He just takes it and accepts it. And so that was kind of hard to like pull that out of him and to add some drama to the film, because otherwise you're just watching this guy run through the woods for an hour essentially. So I really had to make sure I caught those moments where he was showing his vulnerabilities a little bit. They weren't often, but there was a couple of them in there where I had to capture him showing that it hurts, because 100 miles is so far, and to put your body through that is not an easy thing to do. And he did it 4 times obviously. So
in such a short amount of time too. I think that's the thing. Like your body, I can't imagine that your body's recovered too much, or at least for the average person. For him, obviously more so than not. I know he's running a race this weekend, which is the last runner standing. And I'm like in the back of my mind going, I wish David Goggins would go run it, because I'd love to see those two go at it.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Who would actually? I don't think either one of them would quit. So
I was gonna say I think they just go forever. Essentially, I don't know if there would be an end to that.
Exactly right. Well, hey, listen, let's just kind of shift a little bit of focus here, because you went to the University of Wyoming.
Yep.
And remind me again, you did not graduate with like a media career, right? I mean, that was not the plan.
No, not at all. So my undergrad was political science with the intention of going to law school eventually.
Okay.
And my junior year, at UW. My girlfriend Bree and I, we did an exchange program in Hawaii for a year, and going over there, like it just totally got us out of our element. Like neither one of us had really ever left Wyoming, and going to Hawaii, it's just everything about it is different over there. And so
Yeah.
I think really just the exposure and kind of the culture shock of being 19 years old and leaving home and really leaving the country almost. It was just like a total shock, and I don't know if it was like an epiphany or anything like that, but I just really found a passion for filmmaking and photo and video and storytelling. And so that's where that all kind of started and where it really started to develop there. Yeah, it was never really in the plan. I mean, I took like one audio visual class in high school just for fun. But besides that, everything else was just self-taught, a lot of hours on YouTube, watching tutorials, doing online courses. I mean, even just watching, like movies and TV shows now, kind of like in the back of my head, I'm always thinking like, oh, how did they shoot this scene? How did they light this? Like the sequence of shots, how it's cut together, all these different things that, somebody who's not in that world probably doesn't think about those things. Yeah. But I kind of subconsciously do all that stuff now. And it was, like I said, it was never planned to go into media. And now it's, my full-time job, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Once you're behind the camera, you can never look at a commercial. You can never look at a movie the same, right? Because you're always seeing it from the view of the lens now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like Brie hates watching movies with me because that's all I talk about is like she's focused on the story a lot of the times of like, oh, I can't believe you did this, and I'm just focused on like, oh, they should have cut it this way, or they should have shot it from this angle or something. Yeah. So it's just ingrained in me now.
So when you made that decision, I'm curious. I mean, did you get any like any kickback, or was it support? Like, what was that? What was that like when you made a decision to go from a really prestigious career going into becoming an attorney, right, to something that it's almost like acting, right? Like, oh, I want to be an actor. You're like, really? We just paid for 4 years of college, and you want to be an actor now?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't have a lot of support. I would say Bree is probably the biggest supporter. She always thought that, I should just do whatever makes me happy. And that was filmmaking. But, most friends and family, they're like, why would you do that? Like you can make so much more money as an attorney. It's such a like beaten path, go to get a bachelor's degree, go to law school, to go work at a big law firm. It's just like the easier path really. Sure. Instead of trying to, make your own path and figure things out on your own. So that was kind of a challenge to say no to those people and just continue to do what I wanted to do. Because it really, the law school thing was just like, it's always sounded good. It's like I just said, it's, kind of, it's got a beaten path and there's not a lot of mystery to it. And, you're going to end up making a good living and things like that. But it just truly never intrigued me that much, the substance of it. And so filmmaking did. And I was just always continued to, like in my free time, watching YouTube videos on how to edit better and looking at camera tutorials and all these different things, just continued to pull me that direction. And then it just all happened kind of organically over the last like 5-6 years. And like I said, now I'm here doing it full time. So it was an interesting progression, but I probably wouldn't change anything about it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, man, that you did that. I mean, there's so many people that live with regret going, man, I should have just chased this at an earlier time, or I should have why did I shut that door? And I ended up falling into because I just felt like I had to get a job, right? And people don't realize, like, it doesn't matter if you're 20, it doesn't matter if you're in your 30s, doesn't matter if you're 40s, like whatever that time is, it doesn't matter. That's the time to do it. And yeah, there's going to be some kickback, but you got to push through that. So I really applaud you for doing this. Now tell everybody where you're at right now, because this is a great story. I'm really excited about this company that you're working with right now. And it's really, I think there's such a great future for not only you, but also what this company potentially can do here in the United States.
Yeah. So in January, I started working at, it's called Bear Performance Nutrition. It's owned and founded by Nick Bear. He's pretty popular on YouTube and social media. And we're a supplement company on the outside, but really we're kind of a media and entertainment company. Mostly we do a lot of documentaries and podcasts, and we push out a ton of different content online. And about a year ago, this is a part of the reason what even kind of inspired Chasing 400 to begin with was, I found Nick on YouTube and he was doing a big like Ironman prep series. So I got really into his Ironman videos, and they were just really well put together. He had a whole media team, and I was like, man, that'd be so much fun to be able to put something like that together, to tell this big story of, somebody achieving a big goal. And that's when I texted Justin. I was like, hey, Justin, you want to maybe put something like this together? And obviously he said yes. But so just a year ago, I was literally sitting on my couch watching these videos, just dreaming about working for this company specifically. And then at Leadville, when I was there filming Justin, I recognized the whole BPN team. They were all there because Nick was running the race. And I went up to him, started talking to him, kind of networked over the next couple of months. And then they were hiring for a videographer position. And they hit me up and said, hey, you interested in coming to work for us? And I said, of course, I'm more than willing to come down there to Texas. And now I'm here. It's been a kind of a crazy last 12 months, but I don't know. It's been really cool.
You know, it's amazing what happens when you just start saying yes in your life, right? Just start saying yes, the opportunities, and without knowing or understanding the outcomes, or just, you know, for you, you know, we talked about this a little bit before the show. Like, there wasn't about the financial gain that you're going to get this from, you know, it's because you're following your passion, or you really felt like this was your calling. And so many great things happen when you do that.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. It's like, it's just a butterfly effect, really, of like, what if I wouldn't have turned down law school, and I would have continued to go down that path and be working in an office 9 to 5, you know, doing paperwork. If I would have just continued to do that, like I definitely wouldn't be here right now and doing what I love every day, where it doesn't feel like work. It's just, I just think of it as a butterfly effect of these small, seemingly insignificant decisions that we make on a daily basis. They just, over time, they compound into these huge things that, you know, you look back a year or two later, and it's just a culmination of all these different minor decisions.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So we got to know, everybody's gonna be asking. So Nick and Justin were at the same race. They're both elite athletes. Who won?
Justin won. He definitely beat Nick. I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 hours he got him by. They were actually really, really close up until about mile 60, I want to say. When they got to Hope Pass, that's the big climb at about the 50-mile mark at Leadville. That's when they kind of started to split off. I think that's where Justin's inner ultra runner kind of came out. And then Nick, not being a natural ultra runner, that's where that course kind of started to get the best of him. But it was cool because like I said, for the first half of the race, Justin would come in, and then 5-10 minutes later, Nick would come in too. So I got to see both of them running at the same time, which was really neat.
Yeah.
But I mean, Justin, this is like, I think Leadville was like his 7th or 8th hundred, and that was Nick's first. So it was like, it's hard to compare the two, but it was really cool to see them both in the same race.
Without a doubt. And I know that they don't do it for competition, but everybody's going to ask. They're like, why did you ask that question? So I just beat everybody to the punch on that one. So, well, hey, listen, as we kind of wrap this up, the people that listen to this show are, they're young entrepreneurs typically, or they're young in their entrepreneurship. They might not necessarily be young, physically in a sense. And I'd love to know, is there any advice that you would give them after this experience that you've had? I know that you're still chasing this dream. I know that you're, once again, we're at base camp 1, maybe even at base camp 2. We're so far still from the peak of your business, of your ultimate success. What advice would you give to somebody that's at base camp 1, or that they're not even there yet? They're actually just in that pursuit of something.
My biggest piece of advice, which, I kind of just realized more recently, is to just keep going. And it, like I mentioned, it's all these small daily decisions and choices that we make that end up compounding into this big thing. But if you have a passion, and it's something that you truly care about, if you just continue to show up every single day, you can't make excuses. It's just day in, day out, showing up, spending time on that goal. It's going to compound over time, and it's going to get you to where you want to be. And it's not doing what society says you should do or what your parents say you should do to some extent. It's just doing what you want to do and what makes you happy. And, what fulfills your soul, I think is a big part of it, is not worrying about money and all these other external factors. It's just internally what makes you feel good and what feels right to you. And if you continue to do that every single day, it's going to make you, it's going to get you places.
Love it, man. That's awesome, dude. Well, you're definitely living that out, and you're a great example of doing that. And you can see how those dreams start to manifest themselves into reality. So congratulations on that. Hey, how do people, well, first of all, how do people find the film exactly? Like, I don't want to tell them to go someplace and you're like, no, that's the wrong place?
Yeah. So it's on YouTube. If you search up Chasing 400, you should be able to find it, or my YouTube channel. It's just Jeremy Miller. You should be able to find it there. And then, and then I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all that other stuff too, but Chasing 400 on YouTube.
And then you also are creating videos, which are pretty amazing too. So where can we find your content that you're creating as well too?
As far as my personal content, or
even for Nick, right? I think you're doing a lot of videos for Nick, which they look amazing.
Yeah, so those are on Nick's YouTube channel. It's just Nick Bear. You can find all that stuff there. Anything on there from the last 3 to 4 months of stuff that I've produced with him. So, yeah. Excellent,
my man, dude. Well, I so appreciated to be on here, dude. I once again, after watching that film, I just knew I had to get you on the podcast because I love it. You could just tell how passionate you were about this documentary. You put your heart and soul in it, and it really is just a great reflection of who you are. So congratulations so far on that success.
I love it. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
You bet. All right, guys. Hey, listen, as we wrap up, the one thing that we do, the call to action is you have to pay the price. And the pay the price is to literally share this. We know that Jeremy brought some great content. He brought some great, authentic, real situations that were going on in his life. And that there's somebody out there that wants to hear this, that needs to hear this. Maybe they're just a young entrepreneur and they're just struggling to show up. They're struggling if they really should be chasing that dream. I love the idea of this butterfly effect. And that if you constantly just show up, good things eventually will happen. So share this episode and go support our man, Jeremy. All right, guys, absolutely love you. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.